Greetings, friends. It's me, Wayman, and I want to do a commentary, kind of, and explanation on the idea of death in the play Alcestis. And it's really interesting because if you take these ideas of death and you compare them to New Testament themes, you find a lot of explanation on or allusions to what's going on. And for example, why Lazarus didn't talk when he came out from the tomb, and the 3-day motif, and the idea of phantom, and the idea of a person who might be half dead or half alive, as Christ was said to be after the supposed resurrection. So here in what 480 maybe BCE, we have these kinds of theological ideas being tossed around, and maybe exaggerate a little bit, but for the most part, they were there floating around. So what I'd like to do is go through this play. The background is a little bit. I'm not going to take a lot of time to go through it because we want to get on to the topic at hand. But Alcestis says she'll die in the place of her husband Admetus, and he was cheated death thanks to Apollo, who cheated the 3 fates. These are the 3 goddesses who spin the web of life, measure the web of life with a rod, and the one who cuts it. So, apparently there was some party, maybe got him drunk and cheated him. So then they said, well, we can let you do that, but you have to provide a corpse. He looked for volunteers. Admetus did. No volunteers. So his wife volunteered. And so then there's this big elaborate drama on speeches back and forth. On she'll do it. She's virtuous. It makes that point. So getting to it, there's an interesting exchange between Apollo and Death when Death comes for Alcestis. And take a look at that if you get time. But where it's important, we're going to go. And we're going to look at some of the themes that were being talked about. So, in the play, she passes on, after these big long speeches. And Hercules shows up. He doesn't know why his buddy, Admetus, is mourning. And, he's asking, who died and things like that. But he doesn't really get a lot of information, so he has no idea. And so in the end of the play, he wrestles Death, brings Alcestis back, and he says to Admetus, hey, I won this woman at a contest, and I want you to take care of her. So this is after he gave Alcestis this big long speech on how he wouldn't allow anybody else in the house, and I'll stay single for you, and because she was all worried that some mean stepmother was going to abuse her kids. So he says, okay. So Hercules brings this woman in that he says he won, and Admetus looks, and he says, hey, this looks like my wife. So we'll get to that part. It's almost to the end of the play, which is the part that's relevant. I don't want this video to drone on. But here it says, beware, it might not be some phantom from the underworld. And Hercules says, do not think your guest is a sorcerer. Admetus says, but do I indeed look upon the wife I buried? Hercules says, yes, but I do not wonder at your mistrust. Admetus, can I touch and speak to her as my living wife? Hercules, speak to her. You have all you desired. And taking Alcestis in his arms, Admetus says, O face and body of the dearest woman, I have you once more, when I thought I should never see you again. Hercules says, you have her, may the envy of the gods be averted from you. And Admetus says, O noble son of the greatest Zeus, fortune be yours, and may your father guard you. But how did you bring her back from the underworld to the light of day? This is the interesting part. Hercules says, by fighting with the spirit who was her master. Admetus, then did you contend with death? Hercules, I hid by the tomb and leaped upon him. Admetus, but why is she speechless? Hercules, you may not hear her voice until she is purified from her consecration to the lower gods. And until the third dawn has risen, lead her in, and you, Admetus, show as ever a good man's welcome to your guests. Farewell, I go to fulfill the task set me by the king, son of Siphonis. Stay with us and share our hearth, Admetus says. Hercules, that may be hereafter, but now I must go. So, because Admetus showed Hercules kindness and to allow him a place to stay in his travels, he wrestled death and brought Alcestis back. So what's interesting here is she can't say anything, as we read, for 3 days. And in the play Helen, Helen was a phantom, according to Euripides, in the play Helen. And all the fighting was for naught, because, like the real Helen was someplace else. So this idea of the phantoms and the unreal being half dead, half living, was very much a part of these kinds of ideas that were expounded on in literature and in plays. And if you read a lot of Greek philosophy, they discuss this in the afterlife. So, getting to New Testament themes, here you had Lazarus being called from the tomb, Christ coming back after 3 days. He can walk through walls, all kinds of stuff. People who can touch him, they can touch him. And then, of course, he can speak later. And then, he ascends into the divine realms. The phantom of Helen ascended into the divine realms. So, all I'm saying is that when the New Testament writers were composing the literature, they're writing to Greek, pagan Gentiles. And thematically, they already knew these types of motifs. And they would already say, hey, I heard that before. It rings a bell. New Testament writers would be like, yeah, but this is true. So I think that in a way they took liberties at the theology. That's why the Gospels don't line up. And just like the Greek playwrights, they expound on certain areas, and some they do not. And if they change it up too bad, they get reprimanded for it. And those writers who were reprimanded, those texts we do not have because they were either destroyed or they simply just did not make it into the biblical literature. But they're floating around, and you could read those. The lost books of the Bible is some of those expounding on other things that people thought about in different ways. So I just thought that was pretty interesting, and maybe we'll get to the play Helen someday. But take care, friends, and remember, if everybody's thinking alike, then somebody isn't thinking.